This is the IBJ podcast for the week of March 30th, 2020, brought to you by the law firm Craig DeVault. I'm Mason King. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. Just so you know, for the time being, the IBJ podcast studio is located here in my basement, just east of Broad Ripple. Everything is going okay over here. The family is healthy and enthusiastically practicing social isolation. I hope you are healthy and you are in a safe place and that you have access to all of the food that you need. You know, that for me has been one of the most surprising upshots of the pandemic so far, either how it has exacerbated food insecurity or the fear of food insecurity. You know, at some point, I think we all have worried about whether we'll be able to get the food that we need. We hear stories about desperate shoppers at grocery stores or stores running out of some items fairly quickly. And meanwhile, we obviously don't have the kind of access that we've enjoyed to restaurants, many of which have been forced to close. Some are offering carryout in an attempt to maintain at least a small stream of revenue and keep a few employees working. But the longer this lasts, the greater the chance that we'll see a major shakeout, a seismic shakeout in the restaurant scene. A good chunk of restaurants will not reopen. In terms of local restaurateurs, the Sahm's family of restaurants has as much to lose as any. Before the pandemic hit, it was operating 16 restaurants in central Indiana, which you would know from the ones branded as Sahm's, like Sahm's Place or Sahm's Bar and Grill, or those under the Big Lug brand. It also ran 3 facilities for catering, which, as you can imagine, given the edict against more than a handful of people being in the same place at the same time, quickly had to shut their doors. But founder Ed Sahm and his son, Eddie Sahm, had a little bit of a head start on dealing with the crisis. When things got bad in Italy 3 or 4 weeks ago, they began planning for a major pivot in operations, which in several ways directly addresses these issues of food insecurity that the pandemic has exposed. First off, they refocused Sahm's downtown catering operation into a meal preparation facility for the not-for-profit food relief organization Second Helpings. Meals are going to seniors and families in need. Sahm's is shouldering some of this cost itself, but won't be able to do that for long, and it's hoping to get more support from the community. Second, Sahm's has essentially converted 5 of its restaurants to grocery stores, what it's calling marketplaces and pantries, with prepared food made in large family-sized quantities that customers can order via phone and pick up with curbside service. On the grocery side, it's offering about 100 essential items, including produce, canned food, dairy products, baked goods, cleaning supplies, toilet paper, and you can also get beer brewed at Sahm's Big Lug operations. Now, 2 months ago, Sahm's had 425 employees. When the pandemic hit, it laid off about 90% of them. But between the downtown Second Helpings operation and the marketplaces and pantries, plus the Sahm's Smokehouse location up in Attica, which is offering a limited menu for curbside pickup, Sahm's has been able to offer regular work to about 135 employees. Now, what it's doing is not profitable. It is not breaking even, and it's not even close to being sustainable over the long term. But for the time being, this is what Ed and Eddie Sahm have decided is the company's best chance at survival while doing what they can to help other people survive. I spoke with Eddie on Thursday, March 26th, about how they anticipated the need to radically switch gears, how quickly they had to pivot with a course of about 3 days, and how they're making it all work, at least for now. Here's the interview. Hey, Eddie, thanks for making time to speak with us. I know you're super busy.
Thanks for having me on. Yeah, could make a little time.
So just to set the scene, where are you right now as we're talking?
I'm at my house. I'm looking at my dog, who's a mutt that I have no idea what he is, and I have a little terrier, and I'm looking over pre-orders on my computer and working on some Second Helpings stuff to get some mouths fed here in Indy.
Okay, and you are technically isolated, is that right?
I am, yeah. I go out to the restaurants in the morning and a couple times a week, help do inventories, but I only go there when no one's there. I'm a kidney transplant recipient, so probably best that I not be around people as much as possible, and trying to help my staffs get ready as much as I can in the interim.
So take me back a little bit. When did Sahm's begin tracking coronavirus as maybe a potential threat to the business and staying open?
It was a couple weeks ago. You know, I can remember Ed and I, my father were in Attica, and we were having a conversation about what Italy was doing and kind of what everyone was going through. Him and I are both pretty proactive thinkers, and we're just trying to figure out what we would do if something like this happened. I just remember the next 24 hours, things got so much more serious, and him and I started to say, okay, this is something that we're going to have to change with. So we started to get a plan together where we were no longer going to think like, well, maybe it won't happen, but okay, this thing probably will happen. What are the steps in place that we're going to have to take to make us, essential for our neighborhoods and feed people who could be very hard pressed to get food soon? So I'd say it's been about like 3 or 4 weeks that we've really seriously been contemplating this. And, really as far as acting, maybe a week and a half of hardcore action.
Did you have an emergency plan ahead of this?
I mean, not like this type of emergency. I think we always knew what it would look like for like a downturn in sales. We've always had kind of that snow day plan, right? We've had weeks where electricity was an issue or snow was down. I remember probably 8 years ago, we had a really hard snow and ice storm, and we were down for like a week and a half. So, we've seen what it looks like to take major breaks, but nothing where, it's 100% layoffs.
Obviously, the thing that is really different about what you're doing isn't just that you're, doing curbside pickup for stuff that's already on the menu. You're sort of a de facto, grocery store and produce store. Where did that idea come from?
Him and I kept hearing the words carry out and look at how we're cleaning our restaurants. And I don't know, it's not so much that Ed and I disagree with, from like a political stance with like our leadership of our country. It's more along the lines that, we knew that the CDC and the WHO, these people were saying that the stuff we were doing was wrong, that a server standing right next to you at a table taking orders, someone putting together a to-go bag and handing it to you with a pen to sign a check to hand back to you and put in a cash register. It was like all that stuff was not in any way, shape, or form aligned with these health experts. So we really quickly decided that, we had to come up with something that was more essential than the normal dining experience. How are people going to get food? How can we make it more affordable so that it can fit into the new budget, which is very quickly evolving this is going to get longer and longer. And then how can we do it in a way that encourages safety and people staying home? So hopefully we can shorten the amount of time that this thing is a critical issue in hospitals and around the country, because it'll hang around for a really long time. But if we can just kind of flatten it, then I think we've done our part as the food industry. So the pivot came knowing that the way we did things was no longer essential, that was still just a luxury, and we needed to act more like a grocery in order to remain essential for our communities.
And then would you also then, I guess, have an added benefit of at least keeping some of your employees active?
That's definitely part of it. If I could keep them all employed, I would, even at a zero profit level, but that's still just not a possibility. And that's with our banks working with us and our landlords, a lot of them local guys being really, really kind and at least seeing us through a few months of this. So, yeah, a lot of this is to stabilize the staff and keep them involved. And I tell all the people that I've talked to lay off or to talk about, I'm on unemployment basically, right? I don't pay myself. And so I'm trying to tell them, hey, look, the thing I can do for you is reopen. So let's try to stabilize it and make it something where in 2, 3, 4 months we can come out of this and reincorporate all the jobs we had before. That's the best case scenario for us at this point.
So you had about 425 employees maybe 2 months ago. Again, how many did you have to lay off? You said about 90%?
90%. We're kind of reintroducing some people back who originally were going to go on unemployment, but we think now we can supply a full-time job that is safe and feeds a lot of people in Indy and allows them to put money in their pockets. So, that's the balance of this whole thing. Some people's safety has to come first, and even the idea of feeding the community isn't enough. They have a loved one who's ill, to someone like in my position with immune compromised, something that you can't do. I have plenty of staff who's willing to help, but again, the balance of how much money you're going to bring in, do you want to risk it and help feed people? We're trying to keep all those in line, and it's a pretty hard thing to juggle.
So do you recall just about the time you decided you really needed to pull the switch and make the change?
We had an all restaurant invited meeting where we were trying to get in front of other restaurateurs and just kind of have everyone pick each other's brains and voice their frustrations and what their plans were. I think because we all kind of felt like we were being left out of something, like we were all closed and our hands were forced to become something different, but we were still playing the same game. So it was, I want to say it was last Friday. No, man, time's been going a little
it kind of melts
wonky, right?
together.
2 Fridays ago that I sat down and talked with a bunch of restaurateurs and just said, hey, we all have to seriously talk about what closing looks like, and not just closing your doors to the public, but like what closing your normal business looks like to pivot to this new way that we're going to have to get by to not only make enough money to survive, not only to feed the community, but to encourage people that staying home is the best option. And how do we be proactive in that as well? Because it is an oxymoron to tell people to come out and see you, but then to stay home. So, how do we do that? So that was when we talked to everyone. I think all the restaurants were in the same boat. This isn't going to work. Gift cards aren't enough. We don't want to start GoFundMe pages. We're not in the business of handouts. We want to give people an exchange of goods. How can we continue to do that? And that's when it became abundantly clear to us that it was, what we were talking about was no longer just a pretty good idea. It was going to have to be the mandatory way to do things soon.
So from the point at which you decided, we're going to go to this different model, to the point at which they actually opened up, which was what, probably like last Saturday?
The first one was open last Thursday.
Okay.
And then, they were all open by this weekend.
Okay. So what was that period of time in which you were able to execute that pivot? Like a week?
Yeah, it's about 72 hours.
Oh my God, 3 days?
A lot of phone calls. I mean, I sent an email to Jennifer over at Second Helpings, their CEO, at 2 a.m. because I was kind of brainstorming this idea about how to mobilize our downtown kitchen staff, which was looking like we would have to lay them all off. So we ended up keeping almost all of them employed, which was great. But a lot of phone calls and a lot of work with our distributors who don't distribute to grocery stores, the U.S. Foods of the worlds and the Cisco's. We knew that they were going to have a lot of inventory, and working on pricing with them and getting them to join the cause, which they definitely did and are really great partners.
Yeah, so you needed to, for example, change your website. I would assume kind of change the stuff that you were ordering from your distributors.
Yeah, inventory was the hardest part.
Yeah.
I mean, what you're going to buy, how much of it. I can tell you how many potatoes are needed to make 50 portions of fries, and the likelihood of someone buying fries versus pasta salad or a salad or whatever. But when it comes to people buying 5 pounds of potatoes versus buying 5 pounds of tomatoes versus buying a quart of cottage cheese, like, I don't know how people buy groceries.
So you just had to guess, basically.
Oh, yeah, 100% guess.
Now that you've been open for, I don't know, more than a week or about a week, how was your guessing?
The Second Helpings part of this is nice because if we overbuy, either whether it's because it's a good price that we can give to the people at home to really get grocery level pricing on different things, if we buy in bulk and it wasn't as popular as we thought, we always have the ability to turn that into a lot of meals with Second Helpings. Mm-hmm. So, we've turned a lot of excess food into thousands and thousands of meals. So it's a nice partnership and actually really works right now to feed the most people as we can. We've been talking to some different companies about donating to the cause, and donating to our cause, which we're calling Feed to Flatten. Is basically, hey, we're going to take your money directly into the hands of our distributors like Cisco and companies like Second Helpings, and actually use our workforce to not only make meals, but to double, triple the size of the capacity that they could do before.
Yeah, explain that kind of from the beginning, if you don't mind. You mentioned that a couple of times. You had the location downtown, and that was for what?
Location downtown, we did catering, a lot of catering. We did tens of thousands of jobs a year. And it got shut down completely. Every event space and catering space right now is completely reeling, and more so because planning is almost impossible. When does this thing stop? When are people going to look to do events again? So we knew that was going to be our first business to take the hit, and right away we we knew we needed to do something proactive with it. And in my head, it was going to be to feed people that were in the most need. So nursing homes and schools, homeless, all the different groups that are all of a sudden in a really hard place. So Second Helpings was a place that we've done a lot of business with, and I knew had been looking to do some expansion. So we talked to them, and they were really gung ho about it. They were the ones who really made that thing turn quick to get us involved from a paperwork point of view. So yeah,
Second Helpings, they supply the food where they get from the people that donate food to them.
And then they supply and contacts, who we're going to send food to. They give us all kind of the logistics that they need, and then our workforce makes the food and boxes it and gets it out.
How are you kind of covering your costs on that?
Well, that's a great question.
Are you covering your costs on that?
Not really. We're trying to get to a price per meal that is the most effective for the community. And I think they like to be at around $1.50 or so. And I won't put words into their mouth, but we're at about $3.25 per meal. That's kind of for the workforce, the food that we buy, and then we're also doing the distribution of it from our end. So that's where a lot of the money we're asking for is going to go towards, is to actually allowing us to lower the price per meal to get more meals out into the community.
So where does the money come from?
Well, right now, mostly from us and from our distributors. But that money from our end is definitely running out. Second Helpings has some.
So you're funding some of this operation.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's on you guys.
And probably too much of it,
Yeah.
But we're talking to a lot of different people right now, and working with some local businesses that have stepped up and shown interest in maximizing dollars they do have to feed people now. I think that's the crisis that we're in, is this stuff isn't happening in 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. It's happening right now. And it's only going to get worse. So if we're not looking at this problem on a day-to-day basis, then we're going to fail a lot of people around this city.
Okay, let's take a quick break so we can hear from our sponsor. This is the IBJ Podcast.
The IBJ Podcast is brought to you by Krieg DeVault, a trusted and dynamic law firm representing a wide variety of local, regional, and national clients. Committed to each other and to every client, Krieg DeVault prides itself on integrity, professionalism, respect, and excellence. Financial institutions, global manufacturers, national healthcare providers, and successful organizations of all sizes and market focus rely on Krieg DeVault to create innovative and successful business solutions. Connect today at www.kriegdevault.com.
All right, we're back with the IBJ Podcast. We're talking this week with Eddie Sahm of the Sahm's family of restaurants in central Indiana about surviving the coronavirus crisis. You mentioned you were able to keep the employees at that downtown location, the catering location. How many folks was that?
That is about 75 people, 70 people. So yeah, that was a big part of we had laid off around 90%. And then this was a big part in us bringing some back and getting them back involved and cooking, the ones who are healthy and the ones who are signing off on staying quarantined and this being their only thing they go to. So
Is that 75 as part of that 425 figure that you mentioned before? Okay.
Yep.
So you initially had to lay off about 90%, and then you add back in those people who were working at the catering.
The layoffs we originally did was like, look, we're going to let you go. You're laid off, get unemployment. If we can open up these jobs, you're going to stay here. We would love for you to stay here. We'll reach back out to you and try to get you back in. And luckily for us, these things happen so fast that we could go right back to them and say, kind of here's what the money's going to look like. This is both for management, hourly, catering, sales, dishwashers, all of them had to have a new discussion on what this was going to look like for a 2 to 3 month period, because old salaries and old pay rates kind of had to go out the window.
Oh, is that right? So they're not making as much as they were before.
No, not as much, but we got closer this week to getting back to a normal place, but still a ways to go.
So you've got 75 working at the catering facility, and then at all the other locations where you have somebody working, how many is that people?
15 at the max. I mean, I'd say of the other 5 locations that are doing it, we probably have about 60 people, and they they're helping out depending on which space is in the most need.
How have the sales been if you just look at the marketplaces?
They've been okay. I mean, if you compared that to the regular store sales, it's still about a 70% decrease in revenue, but manageable, especially when the landlords are waiving some things and our utility companies are being somewhat lenient. Our overhead's down, so it's okay. I mean, it's doable for a little while, but it's nothing where we can invite everyone back in and start getting the full-time crew.
So just in terms of operating the marketplaces, are you losing money still on that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
As far as the company's concerned, I think it's enough for us to stabilize for a little while, as long as we don't have any other crazy catastrophes. But as of right now, I know I'm not alone in this, in the restaurant, catering, and event world. There's not a lot more we could take. I mean, everyone right now is on razor thin margins. You pay for the food, you pay for the labor, and then you kind of hope that everyone else is lenient. I mean, That's kind of where we're all at.
So you're not breaking even on the marketplace operations?
No. breaking even with a lot of help.
Yeah. How do you do that? Did you just have a lot of money sitting around? How do you?
No.
Where's your money coming from?
I mean, honestly, it's about for us, it's about relationships. We can pay for the food and we can pay for the labor. So as far as that's concerned, we have an operation where the revenues are meeting what we have to meet for the immediate bills. Our other distributors like Cisco, Piazza Produce, there's probably a handful, 5 to 10 that we owe money to, because our life is daily sales. So all of a sudden we bought up all this food. We're in some net 30, net 60 terms. And then we look at them and say, hey, that revenue that we were depending on, well, it just got completely crushed. So it's gone. So all the payment plans that we had in mind for you have gone out of the door. We can't do it for you anymore. So we've had to go to them and say, will you work with us on pushing these back? Can we get on different types of payment plans? Hey, landlords, what does rent deferment look like? We're looking at SBA loans right now. I mean, there's a lot of levers being pulled until we find the right balance. And it's hard to know. It might be a couple weeks out, but there weren't cash reserves for this. It was really just, hey, let's start getting a plan that can at least pay some people to be here and pay for our food. And we've been a great partner to a lot of people around the city for 35 years now. So hopefully they can take that and say, hey, Sahm's is here to feed the community. Let's do what we can for them in the interim, and trust that when we come out of this, we'll get right back to paying everyone back.
Did you own any of your locations, or are all 16 to 19 of them? Are you leasing all of those?
We own Sahm's Place on 65th and Keystone. And then we have some contracts that all on the golf courses that we run there, food and beverage operations, where our leases are low and we're promised a certain amount of kickback. So some of them are unique when it comes to the leases. One of them's owned. And like one of them, we deal with One America for the catering. So we work with them on what shutdown looks like and what rent is based on revenues. So that clearly changes. I'd say we have 4 different landlords right now. I think it's 4 different landlords that we deal with.
And they've all been amenable to making some kind of arrangement.
Yeah, they've all been pretty great.
Have you been talking to lenders at all?
A little bit, yeah. We do a lot with Farmers Bank here in Indiana, and we've been working with them. We're talking right now with I believe Somerset for SBA loans and trying to get some of that stuff rolling, and I think that will help stabilize the staff a lot too. Just the idea that we can kind of refinance and get some funds immediately available to get back to normal for a few weeks. We just don't have any confirmed answers on a lot of the stuff when it comes to our lenders.
And yeah, obviously the federal government has this giant package of stimulus. I assume you're exploring all those avenues to see what might apply to you guys.
Yeah, there's definitely some money out there. Still waiting to know what the rates are going to get to, and is it going to be zero? Are we going to have negative interest rates potentially? On these SBA loans, is it going to help our landlords and different people we work with that allows them to refinance and get to a position where they can actually offer us similar terms over a longer period? So we're trying to wait for these dominoes to fall because I think it'll answer a lot of questions.
You mentioned safety a little bit before. How are you trying to keep the customers safe as possible? How are you handling the food and the pantry items to mitigate the risk of transmitting the virus?
I think that's probably the most important thing that we all need to be paying attention to in the restaurant industry is the safety. What we're doing is every employee has their temperature taken when they come in, very similar to what you were seeing happen in Wuhan there when those stories were coming out. The people who do work for us have a driver's notice in which we ask anyone that works for us that they have to go straight home, and they get that signed by us when they come in, that they've stayed quarantined and that they're promising that this is the only thing they do outside of work and the only contact they have outside of being at home. Mm-hmm. At work, we're clearly very diligent about, making sure proper hand washing is done. We've had an abundance of gloves purchased, more gloves than I've ever seen used ever, which is a good thing, but gloves don't solve the problem. Mm-hmm. Gloves are a short-term solution. For the drive-up, we do contactless pickup. So you call in your order. We take your credit card over the phone. When you arrive, you'll call us and let us know you're there. We actually take the food out, put it down on a table. There's a hand washing station on that table. We encourage our guests to put the food in their car and then wash their hands when they're done, and then they go. So employees and guests never come within 10 feet of each other.
How have the beer sales been? Have you been able to?
Okay.
Have you been able to do? Is carry out the right word for this? Of cans before this?
Yeah.
Okay.
And ATC, the Alcohol Tobacco Commission, they have been pretty steadfast on analyzing this and changing rapidly. So, we used to have some issues where you couldn't do like curbside pickup. You had to come in to get it. It wasn't 100% clear on what you could or couldn't do, but you kind of knew what was frowned upon. And some of that stuff has been alleviated by the ATC, as they know that it's become harder for us to operate, and that's just no longer the safest option. But I mean, beer sales have been all right. I mean, they're definitely not like the leader for us, but we have cans, and I think beer is one of those things that is a nice, like normal luxury for people, where you can still have a beer in the backyard or while you're grilling or, sitting, watching TV at the end of the night. I think that it's still a nice luxury for people, even if it's not an essential.
I assume you've had to really cut back on the brewing, though.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's purchases in general have been scaled way back. And we're able to brew with ingredients that we had on hand, but some of our beers will require us to order grain packages and new yeasts that we no longer have or haven't propagated, and there's some hops that we need to get in. So anything that we need to buy for the beers that we have is going to be stalled out for a little while. So some of the mainstays that we've had for the last 4 years are going to kind of go away until we're ready to get stuff back in.
If you had to sort of summarize, like, how has it been going? How do you determine whether or not this is successful?
I mean, it's all right. It's not successful. That's the hardest part. Is I know everyone wants to be hunky-dory about it, but it's like, it's not great. And that's just not for me. It's for every restaurant. I mean, some of us will do okay for a little while because there's a lot of love for local places and people trying to do what they can to support us. But, I've had people, buy $100 gift card. I've had people buy $500 in gift cards, and that's fantastic. I don't want to dismiss that as little, but it's still not enough when you look at the revenues we expect to do to pay for our overhead and to pay for all of our staff and just to keep going on a daily basis. It's just not enough. So I think it's okay. And we're happy that we can keep feeding people. But when it comes down to the business side of this, I want people to understand that, we still need you to raise your voices up and to any state legislator or representative, that there's still help that's needed on a local business level, that we're all going to try our hardest to keep people employed, but this is not sustainable by any means. So, as we enter in harder times, it's just going to get tougher and tougher. The layoffs are going to keep going up, not just for restaurants, but now for other businesses that are going to feel the effects as this goes into 4 and 5 weeks instead of 1 to 2 weeks. So, there's the side of me that just wants people to know the realistic nature is that your favorite restaurants, catering places, event spaces, they are all in an extreme desperate way, whether or not they want to admit it, or let you in on that secret. It's going to get really, really hard. So if and when the time comes that you can support local, definitely do, but make sure it's within the parameters of staying safe.
So as you look forward, I don't know, 1 week, 2 week, 3 week, 4 week, how far ahead can you see? How far ahead do you think you can keep going for now?
I think we could keep going for a little while. What we're trying to do is look at whatever the CDC says and what some of the other leaders in the world are doing right now, how long it's taken them to get to a point of normalcy, because no one's really all the way there yet. We're looking at those timelines and imagining that we're going to be in something similar. So if I had to guess, I would imagine we probably have about 7 more weeks of this. I don't think Easter is the answer. Our goal is to say, can we make it through 7 weeks, and to work towards that every day and keep trying to employ more people as we go.
Well, best of luck to you guys.
I appreciate it.
My thanks again to Eddie Sahm. And folks, before you get on with the rest of your week, whatever that entails, I want to draw your attention to a few stories in this week's edition of IBJ that will help deepen your understanding of this extraordinary and often extraordinarily confusing healthcare crisis and economic downturn. The first is a profile of Dr. Christina Box, who prior to March was an almost anonymous public servant, despite her relatively high rank as state health commissioner. Now she is front and center every day as the state's point person in battling the COVID-19 epidemic, which of course has claimed dozens of lives and threatens to overwhelm hospitals. John Russell profiles the career-long obstetrician and gynecologist who now plays a key role in containing the spread of the disease and shaping the state's recovery from this catastrophic event. Also in this week's issue, Susan Orr explains how Central Indiana banks are handling commercial customers who suddenly have found themselves unable to make loan payments because of pandemic-related business disruptions. And Greg Andrews examines how the coronavirus is thwarting years of hard-earned progress for Indianapolis-based Republic Airways. You can find these stories in the latest print edition of IBJ or online at ibj.com. Some of our coverage on the coronavirus crisis can be accessed for free on the website for all readers, and that includes our continuously updated digest of all the latest news, which of course is called The Latest. And you'll see that on the IBJ homepage. But remember, for free and unfettered access to all of IBJ's award-winning business content, just hit the subscribe button. Thanks for making time this week for the IBJ podcast, which is edited by managing editor Leslie Weidenbenner. I'm Mason King, and we'll be back again next week.